Hi, and thank you for joining us for another episode of BSPN. I'm Brandon Corey here with Josh Goldberg and David Fixler. And my favorite time of the year is here. It's March Madness. One sad part, I got my bracket right here, and you can't really tell from the video, but it's a lot of wrong picks. My champion's already out. I had Villanova, unfortunately, but still a lot of great games left to play. We're at the Sweet 16 right now. Games going on in just a few hours, and we're going to just hit on them now. By the time the video comes out, some of them will already be over, but we'll see how correct we are. First, I want to talk about the biggest surprises and upsets so far in the tournament, which usually you end the first round, you would expect a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get that. You had USC over SMU.
Mm-hmm.
You had Xavier over Maryland, and then Middle Tennessee and Wichita State won, but they were actually favored if you looked at the spread. So
Right.
it really, as far as upsets go, it was definitely a weak first round, and USC and Xavier were popular picks as well. Do you think this is just an abnormal tournament, or what do you think was causing the lack of upsets?
I don't know. I mean, it's really weird. You know, I think some of it might be to the fact that a lot of the top seeds, I think, weren't as good as they normally are. I think there was more parity, and so because of that, the top seeds were kind of, more worried about getting through the first round. They're more conscious of, all right, each game at a time kind of like thing, and I think that really helped them win the games that they were supposed to win.
It's an interesting point of view. Yeah, you'd think just because the tournament's so wide open this year, there was no, absolute favorite like there has been in the past. Villanova was the favorite, but not many people had Villanova, even considering like their side of the bracket was very difficult compared to the other one seeds. But as you go to the round of 32, you notice that the upsets start coming in. Villanova gets upset by Wisconsin. Duke loses to South Carolina. Xavier over FSU, and then Michigan over Louisville. So I want to talk about those games. Wisconsin over Nova really surprised me. They were my pick to win. They had just about everyone from last year's championship team minus Archie Diacono. I really trusted that this was the most talented team in the tournament. I thought they would take it. But Wisconsin with Greg Gard, in his first 2 seasons as head coach, has now made the Sweet 16 twice. So Wisconsin has proven, I think, to be a very capable tournament team over the last few years. What do you guys think about this game?
Yeah, I mean, one thing you just brought up was experience, and in terms of the NCAA tournament, that's one of the factors that really comes into play in terms of if you're a considerable top seed, or even if you have a talented team but maybe aren't ranked as high, that might be one of the predictors for possibly beating a top ranked team. And for Wisconsin, I mean, them and Villanova both have a lot of experience, so I mean that's definitely one of the areas that I think might have helped Wisconsin just in this area to just that they had been here before, and possibly the fact that they were ranked a bit lower than they might have thought they initially would have been.
Deserved.
Which
Yeah,
kind of might have
definitely some seeding discrepancies. Wisconsin was considered to be underseeded. Minnesota got upset by Middle Tennessee. They were considered to be overseeded. And then you had Michigan, who was a 7. Who a lot of people thought were really good, and they've proven people wrong. We can talk about that game, Michigan over Louisville. They come into the tournament as one of the hottest teams. Did this win surprise you, or was this something that you kind of had a feeling would happen?
Well, in one of my brackets, I had them winning it all. And in the other one, and one of my ones that I really had more of an idea of what was going on, I picked both Wisconsin and Michigan. My other part of the bracket is completely busted, but I got those right. But yeah, I saw it as a little bit surprising, but I felt like the ACC this year was really, it was being overrated in my opinion. A lot of the top teams were losing pretty regularly, to be honest, and the Big Ten, they kind of were underrated, and I think that really showed, come tournament time. I think, conference play really messes up, how we view, how good one team is to another.
Yeah, ACC definitely dropped the ball in this tournament. I mean, as far as getting in the tournament, a lot of them got in, and then a lot of them just couldn't live up to the expectations. One ACC team that got knocked out in the round of 32, Duke, who a lot of people, again, they won the ACC tournament. They were a popular favorite to win it all. South Carolina comes in. They play Marquette, kept it close the first half and then blew them away in the second half, and then they come out and beat Duke by 7, I believe. Duke, to me, seemed like, again, one of the more talented teams in this tournament. So what did you think about that game?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning of the first half of the game, it was a pretty low-scoring game for the most part, and Duke held on to a small lead at halftime. But what really kind of caught my attention was that I think in the second half, I think South Carolina scored like over 60 points or something, whereas in the first half they had like 25, which is quite a disparity between those first half and second half totals. And Duke, especially the fact that they were able to keep the score so tight in the first half and then just let South Carolina go wild in the second half with shooting. I mean, that's just such a difference in the scoring that it kind of leaves me skeptical as to what really happened there and possibly show some weaknesses.
It was a little bit weird. South Carolina, not necessarily known as an offensive team, they're pretty much a defensive team, forced a lot of turnovers. That's what happened in the second half versus Marquette. But they really showed up on offense against Duke. So do you think that they have maybe a chance? We'll get to this later, but do you think they have a good chance to beat Baylor? I believe they're tomorrow.
Yeah.
But what do you think their odds are there?
Yeah, I agree. I think they have a good chance at beating Baylor. I mean, Baylor's been strong too, but I feel like anytime you knock off a top seed like a 1 or a 2, that's got to give you, first of all, a lot of motivation to keep going forward and knocking off other top-ranked teams, but also it's got to show that you can beat a top team and shows that your offense is clicking, your defense is clicking, and I think that's at the right time for them.
And the last big upset in the round of 32, what did you guys think of Xavier coming into the tournament? Because I know I wasn't very.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think more of my thinking was I mean Xavier I thought was good, but I thought personally that FSU was. I mean, now looking back on it, more of looking at them, I think they were a little bit overranked. As most of the ACC I think was, and with that, they kind of Xavier took it upon themselves after. They've lost so many games. They're like, all right, we're done with this. Let's move on. And they really showed, determination with winning these games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they beat 2 pretty talented teams, I thought. Maryland was a team that, started the season hot. They were one of the, higher-ranked teams in the country. A lot of talent. Everyone likes Melo Trimble. And then they kind of fell apart towards the end of the year. Xavier did that, too. And then Florida State kind of like kept where they were most of the year, I thought. But they beat 2 teams with a lot of talent, and they crushed FSU. Really, I mean, they beat them by a lot. So, do you think this maybe signals a change in the Big East Conference, which took a slide after everyone left for the ACC? They come into this tournament, and now Xavier find himself back in the Sweet 16. Do you think that's kind of a signal at all?
I mean, I think, as David just brought up, I think it shows that Xavier's starting to kind of change the way that they look at, their game right now, their mentality as a team. In terms of overall, throughout the regular team performance, I feel like it's a little tough to say, but I feel like given the current tournament right now, this definitely is a good spot to be in, especially with the upcoming matchup they have against Arizona. But I feel like the way that they played against FSU and the fact that they beat them by 25 points is incredible. I mean, that shows that playing against such a team like that they're able to stay controlled and have a lot of poise, and I think that does show that they're really on top of their game right now and focused.
Sure. So now I want to get into the Sweet 16 games, 4 tonight, 4 tomorrow. I just want to hit everyone real quick. We'll start in the eastern side of the bracket. Wisconsin is playing 4-seeded Florida. Florida, I thought, is a really hot team right now. They looked a little shaky in the first half versus Eastern Tennessee. By the way, did you guys see Eastern Tennessee dunking pregame?
I did not.
They looked like animals. You have to watch that video.
All right.
They were throwing windmill dunks down in pregame. So a lot of people thought they were going to upset Florida. Florida comes out in the second half, beats them by 15, and then they play UVA and absolutely blow them away. UVA didn't put up more than 40 points. So I think they're one of the hotter teams in the country. What do you guys think is going to be the outcome of this one, Wisconsin, Florida? I
personally believe that Wisconsin has the upper edge here. I feel like Florida has played some low-scoring games so far. I mean, they've had, let's say, some, in my opinion, weaker competitors than some of the other teams have had so far. I know Virginia is a more defensive team. They keep opponents to one of the lowest scoring ranks on offense of any team, and they're also a low-scoring team in of themselves, which makes them overall a great team. But I feel like against Wisconsin, which is just knocked off Villanova and is riding a big high right now. I feel like it's going to be challenging for Florida to kind of match that intensity, even despite their run so far.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely a close game. I think Wisconsin, with the way they've been playing, could definitely upset Florida. They already upset who I thought was the best team. I'm going to take Florida in this one just because of how great they looked against Virginia. What do you think, David?
Well, I think it's probably going to be the closest game out of the two ones over in that region. I think, Wisconsin, I think, gets it. I think Ethan Happ, his ability as a center, and Nigel Hayes and Bronson Koenig, just amazing players on that team. I think they carry their way past Florida.
All right, and then the other game in the East, Baylor versus South Carolina. What do you guys think of this one? How do you guys think this one's going to turn out?
I think this one's going to be a little interesting. As with any of these games, they're exciting at this point. Sweet 16, every team's battling for their life. Win or go home. I feel like similarly to Wisconsin, for South Carolina, I feel like when you knock off such a top-ranked team, that kind of gives you a little extra momentum or extra motivation to make you feel like you really you deserve to be in the spot where you are, and that kind of gives you a little overemphasis to really making your team think that you might even be better than what you were initially seeded or the way that you guys or the way a team played during the season. And I feel like, in my opinion, the way that South Carolina just played against Duke will allow them to stay in that mindset against a great team in Baylor and to keep it a close game till the end and to hang on in a tight one.
Yep, I agree. I'm actually very iffy about this game. Baylor, I think, in terms of talent compared to South Carolina, there's a big discrepancy. But South Carolina has proven to be a very good team. They play great defense. They force a lot of turnovers. And then, like we said, against Duke, they proved that they could do it on offense as well. So I'm going to give South Carolina the slight edge in this one.
I'm going to also agree. I think South Carolina takes it, but I think it's going to be a lot bigger of a blowout. I think Baylor has overachieved. I think USC kind of, got that big upset, and once they did, they're just kind of like, okay, and just like fell apart. Baylor has lost to some really good defensive teams in the past. West Virginia blew them out. They lost in the first round, I believe, in the Big 12 tournament. And I think, South Carolina, I don't know if they're that great, but I think they can take it and beat Baylor.
All right, so we're all picking the upset there. We'll move down to the western side of the bracket. We have Gonzaga losing one game so far this season. They're still alive, up against West Virginia, who just took down Notre Dame, one of my Final Four teams. Like I said, very bad bracket this year. But what do you guys think about this one?
I have to go with Gonzaga here. I feel like they've had a great run all season, and obviously the top teams in each region, the number one seeds, are going to be tested at some point, and this is, in my opinion, clearly Gonzaga's toughest game so far. I think it will be a close game all the way through, but I feel like Gonzaga has the experience so far in terms of the way the bracket has gone to be able to prevail in a tight one, and I think it could go either way in my opinion, but I feel like Gonzaga will hang on.
Yep, I agree. West Virginia, the trick is beating the press. I thought Notre Dame would be able to do it, and they couldn't. Gonzaga, I don't know if they'll be capable of it, and I think West Virginia is going to take this one. Again, really close game. West Virginia has knocked off some top teams this year. They played a really competitive conference. They've beaten Kansas. They are really, they do that usually at home, which, they don't have that advantage in the tournament. But just having that experience beating top teams, I think that they take this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think Gonzaga, I think their experience might help. With the press, it's really hard to, you need to have good ball handlers to get up the floor. And, as much as Notre Dame had, sort of that with Matt Farrell and Prestoria, they weren't as good, I think, just experience-wise. And I think Gonzaga gets that. Their Karnowski, their center, is really, really good. And I think with him, kind of leading, where they're getting back, on offense, I think they'll be able to take that one.
All right, good picks there. And then we move down, 11-seeded Xavier against Arizona. This one I don't think is going to be close. What do you think, Josh?
I have to agree right there. I think, both those teams have played some great games so far in the tournament. I personally have to go with Arizona right here. I feel like they've been dominant so far. They've been winning games with comfortable final scores and really, showing that they're as dominant during the regular season as they are right now. And I feel like their defense is one of the best, if not the best, in the tournament right now. And I feel like they will be able to hang on and fight off Xavier despite their competitive nature and the way that they play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Xavier, again, really surprised me to knock off a talented team in Maryland and then blow away Florida State. I didn't think they were capable of that, seeing how they ended the year. I think they finally hit the wall here. I'm going to take Arizona.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to agree. Yeah, Xavier, as there's only so long that you can really take, a sub, par actual team. They're still missing one of their best players, and will be for the rest of the tournament. So, I think Arizona takes it as well.
And then moving up to the Midwest, we have Kansas against Purdue. What do you see here, Josh?
I see another close game right here. Before the bracket started, I was reading some things that Kansas has obviously been a dominant team all season, and Purdue has been great too. One of the areas where Kansas has struggled has been when they reach, I think, 80 points. Beyond there is one point where they've kind of fallen off. Mm-hmm. So the top scoring teams that play Kansas have the best chance of beating them, in that opinion. And I personally thought that Iowa State had the best chance of knocking off Kansas, but they were eliminated by Purdue. I feel like Purdue has a good chance at topping Kansas, but I feel like Kansas, with their experience and Frank Mason's leadership, I feel like Kansas will be able to hang on.
Yep, I definitely like Kansas. I like Bill Self, and I like all the talent they have. I think this is probably the best team left in the tournament, and I'm going to pick Kansas over Purdue.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you guys. Purdue, Caleb Swanigan is a very, very good player. But I think that the Kansas, front court can stop him, or at least hold him to, his own, basically let him do his thing and, everybody else dominate. And in the close one, Frank Mason III is, incredible. You can't stop the man. So Kansas all the way.
Kansas is always a good bet in the tournament. Mm-hmm. They'll be playing if they win, they'll be playing the winner of Oregon, Michigan. That I think will be a fun game. I thought the Pac-12 was a little underrated. Oregon lost their center before the tournament, so a lot of people had them getting upset, but here they are in the Sweet 16. Who do you guys like in this one?
I am going to go for the upset here and say that I think Michigan has a good shot at knocking off Oregon. Both of these teams are great, and honestly, based on record and performance during the regular season, Oregon was probably a better team. Mm-hmm. I feel like right now Michigan, with all that they've been through recently and their playing troubles and everything, I feel like they've found a way to come together and really play at a level that they hadn't done before. And I feel like in this current state, I feel like they're pretty equally matched with Oregon, and I feel like they'll be able to hang on, but it's going to be a close one.
Yep, I have a feeling we're all going to agree here. I'm going to keep riding Michigan. They, with the way they've been playing, to knock off Louisville, who I thought was one of the better teams in the tournament. Mm-hmm. That was an upset that was hard for me to pick. I did pick that one, but it was hard for me because I really did like Louisville this year. Their free throw shooting was iffy for me, and that's why I picked Michigan. And they found themselves here. I think if they can beat Louisville, they can beat Oregon, and they can really go as far as they're willing to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think it might be a little bit closer than we're thinking in our heads. Oregon, as they did lose their center, but they have really good players. Otherwise they're still a very good team. I see Michigan winning, but I would not be completely surprised with the not upset, but what seems to be the upset.
Yeah,
I guess.
definitely. I believe Michigan is favored in that game.
Interesting.
I think the spread's close, but Michigan is favored by a slight edge. Moving down to the South, their last quarter of the bracket, we have UNC Butler. What do you see in this one, Josh?
I see UNC winning this one in a blowout. I think Butler has played well so far this tournament, as with many of the teams that have gotten here, but I feel like they're really going to be up against a tough matchup in UNC, which has honestly been one of the best teams throughout the entire regular season, in my opinion, and I feel like they're just going to fall apart pretty quickly and be out of the game by late the second half.
Is this the only ACC team left?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they're the best one. As far as talent goes. And Butler's kind of had an easy road to get here. Not that any road to the Sweet 16 is easy, but Winthrop was not exactly a popular upset pick. And then they get 12-seeded Middle Tennessee in the second round, which is not an easy win, but it could have been a lot worse. And now they're going to play UNC, which just dwarfs the size of those last two programs. and UNC just is always a good bet to make it far in the tournament. I'm gonna pick North Carolina.
I'm gonna agree with you. Yeah, I agree definitely with the sentiment that Winthrop and Middle Tennessee aren't as good. I think because of that, it might be possible upset just because we don't really know. They haven't, in my mind, been really tested as hard as they have. But North Carolina, Isaiah Hicks and Kennedy Meeks down low are so dominant, and they can I think they could beat any team in the country.
And moving on to the last game, this is the one where I think we'll have some disagreement. UCLA, Kentucky. A lot of people are going with UCLA here just because of how good they looked against NC. What do you see here, Josh?
So, for whatever it's worth, I am going to ride that boat too, and I say that I think UCLA will have an upper edge here, although don't be surprised if this game comes down to a last-second game-winning shot for either team. I think personally, both of these styles are going to be very contrasting with Kentucky and UCLA. UCLA is a very offensive team. They average, I think, 90 points or so during the regular season, which is one of the top scoring margins, if not the highest, during the regular season. And I feel like that for them will put them at the best edge against Kentucky, which is the number 2 seed in the region, and obviously going to be a tough matchup. But I feel like Kentucky's inexperience with their players right now, with Malik Monk and some of the other players, will give them a slight disadvantage in this game, and that's why I'm going to go with UCLA.
Yeah, this one I think will be one of the most fun to watch just because you're going to see a lot of players who are going to be in the NBA in a few years,
Exactly.
Probably a few All-Stars in some time. I'm going to take Kentucky here just because I tend not to like teams that have a ton of publicity around them, and UCLA, I'm not going to give them more publicity, but UCLA has that right now, and as good as Lonzo Ball is as good as the rest of that team is, I just think Kentucky with this team of future NBA players, it's always hard to pick against them. It's hard to pick against Calipari in the tournament. I'm going to go Kentucky.
I've also gone back and forth on this one. I think this one's going to be, probably the hardest pick. I think both, Kentucky and UCLA won really good games, in the games prior. Cincinnati was like one of the only teams in the country with less than 7 losses and, made the tournament. And Wichita State is a really good team. I'm going to give the edge to Kentucky. I think, they won the SEC tournament. They've been on the winning ways. Lately, UCLA, they've been proved to be a little bit more fallible, I think. And so I'm going to give it to Kentucky.
All right. So that concludes our Sweet 16 picks. Before we leave, I just want to, out of all those 16 teams, I want you guys to pick your one favorite team. Josh, who do you got?
I'm going to go with Arizona. I feel like their team has been excellent so far this year, and obviously each team is going to have a different sort of route to getting to the final game and championship game. But I feel like for Arizona, that route might be the easiest of any region, and I think they're the strongest team right now.
Yeah, looking at the bracket, it's definitely a good point. Gonzaga, not necessarily the best 1 seed. Actually, if you look at the East, I don't know, Wisconsin, Florida, Baylor, South Carolina, I feel like anyone could really come out of there. That's definitely maybe an easier quadrant of the bracket. But I actually agree with you. I'm going to take Arizona in this one. I trust Sean Miller as a coach. This is a very good team. And again, I think the Pac-12 is underrated this year. I have them playing Michigan in the finals and Arizona taking it.
I'm not going to pick Arizona. I don't know. There's something about them that just doesn't strike me as like the championship team. I'm not entirely sure where else.
They might be missing that number 1 player that you see on UCLA or that you see on Kansas. That player that can be the X factor and take a team far.
I think if they end up playing Gonzaga, I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. I could see Gonzaga winning that or, Arizona. But really on the other side of that bracket, I'm tempted to go with Michigan. I like the underdog, kind of like the 7th seed, like Connecticut did back with Kemba Walker, going all the way. That's a really interesting option. But North Carolina is really good. I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with Michigan, though.
Nice.
I think they can do it.
I like it. Definitely would be fun to see. A lot of people are in Michigan right now, and a lot of people picking Michigan to go that far, and they certainly seem like they can do it given the recent play. I'd like to thank you guys for joining us. I really enjoyed this episode. I really am going to enjoy the games tonight, tomorrow, and we'll see how right we are. How right we were in our next episode. We'll see you guys again. Thank you.